Welcome, Mindsetters, to Learn Extra Live. Hope you guys are ready for a nice, exciting session, as I always say, because it's always fun with me and Kathy. So, Kathy, what are we going to be doing today?
Exciting. Grade 10s, we're doing joints. You asked a lot of questions last week about joints, and will I please go over joints? Well, did the skeleton, now we're going to do the joints, okay? So that's and basically skeletal muscle, the movement of the skeletal muscles, but the joints are very important. And imagine if we couldn't.
Oh, that would be so annoying. Like, imagine trying to have coffee and you can't bend your arm.
We'd all be like this.
Yeah,
you
we'd
know?
all just
so
walk
we
around
wouldn't
like
be able
planks.
to bend over, little, like little trees.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That'd
So
be
that's what
terrible.
we're doing today.
All right,
Okay,
awesome.
cool.
So while Kathy makes her way across, guys, you know the drill. Grade 10s, make sure you get chatting to me, because guys, I'm giving these awesome books away. Make sure you get posting on the page. Call in, guys. You know the number. It's going to be appearing down at the bottom of the screen. And guys, make sure you get on the page, www.facebook.com/learn extra. Get chatting to me if you're lost anywhere, you need help. Guys, make sure you talk to me so I can talk to Kathy so we can help you guys out. But I'm going to stop talking, and then Kathy's going to take it away. Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Han. All right, people, now for the grade 10s, if you learn this and you sit and you pay attention now, you will not have to learn anything by the time we're finished, okay? So just pay attention and close your eyes, and all the parts that I say move and how they move, just close your eyes and do those movements so you can feel all the different movements. Now remember, as we were saying now, if we have a body that's made up of an endoskeleton. The endoskeleton is made up of a whole bunch of bones. Now those bones are connected to each other, and we have to be able to move because we're not plants. We're not stuck in the ground. We're animals. We have to move from A to B to get food, to be comfortable, to have our little environment around us. We move as animals. And in order to move, our skeleton provides the structure, but the muscles allow the movement. Now, there are things that are important that you must remember, and we've gone through this when we did tissue or cells, and then tissue, and then organs as well. We did muscular tissue, and that would be what we call striated muscle or skeletal. A striated muscle is what makes up our skeletal muscle, which is the muscle that moves our body. It is voluntary movement. Now, we've also got where muscles are attached to bone, and also where bones are attached to bone. Where muscle is attached to bone, we call that a ligament, and the ligaments will allow us to move. Just think of your Achilles tendon. So wiggle your foot, I don't know if you can see, but wiggle your foot up and down. That movement is because of muscles, but also your Achilles tendon at the back, which connects the ankle to the calf muscle. All right, so tendons, very important, and then ligaments attach bone to bone. So if we didn't have the bone attached to the next bone, we would be like little floppy dolls, which we aren't. Okay, so just to recap what we've gone through all the way through. A joint is formed when two bones meet. Okay, wherever we have two bones meeting, there will be a joint. Now, bones are held in place by ligaments. All right. Tendons attach muscles to bone. It's very important. And another way to remember this is ligaments attach bone to bone. Okay. Whereas tendons attach muscles to bone. Just think of your Achilles tendon. Joints are classified as follows. Now we've got three types of joints. We have fibrous joints, we have cartilaginous joints, and we have synovial joints. Now, your fibrous joints, as I've put here, they're fixed. They can't move. Now, before we go into the detail, just think about any joint in your body that can't move. And you don't want it to move. And let's think of maybe the skull. We've got the sutures that hold everything in place. We've got the sacrum, which is our bum bone. All right? You don't want that to move. I mean, can you imagine if this could all move and go backwards? We would be like a dog with a tail. Okay, well, the tail's actually the coccyx. But we don't want the sacrum to move. We want it to be solid at the back here so that it holds our hips in place. The brain, the skull, you want the cranium to stay in place and not move. I mean, can you imagine if our craniums could move like this? Our poor brain is going to be sitting inside getting quite nauseous. All right, now, if we look at cartilaginous joints, they partly move. Now, where would we have cartilaginous joints? And what I want you to do is put your hands on your ribs and push down and put away, and push down and pull away. Even if you've taken the biggest breath in the world, you can still push down and put pressure on your rib cage. Why? Because of the cartilage that attaches to the sternum. All right, and the xiphoid process that we have over here, which we spoke about last week, that's cartilage. Take your nose, wiggle your tip of your nose around. That's cartilage. So it is movable, but it's only partly movable, whereas fibrous joints are fixed. We don't want them to move. And then we have our synovial joints, and they move freely. Now look at this. I can freely move my shoulder. I can move my elbow. I can move my fingers. All those parts are different joints which allow the bone, which is attached to another bone, to move so that we can do whatever we have to. But we have our fibrous joints, which are fused. They do not move. We have our cartilaginous joints, which can move a little bit. And then we have our synovial joints, which move happily and freely. Okay. I'm sure it's stuck in your heads now, but we're going to do it like this. Here's a picture, always says 1,000 words, and we'll post this for you onto Facebook. All right, we have, let me just get my color here. I think let's go with pink. We have our fibrous joints. There is no movement. And an example, as I said, were the sutures of the skull. So it keeps the skull bone in place. Cartilaginous joints, they're made of cartilage. There's slight restricted movement. We've got the discs between the vertebrae, and we also have the cartilage between the pubic bones. But we also have the cartilage everywhere else in our body, like, for example, in the rib cage. All right, so cartilage sort of moving, are able to move slightly. Fibrous don't move at all. Okay, have you got that in your heads now? Come on. Post to Dear Heart over here, and I want Ty to be able to tell me the learners have got it. They know fibrous joints do not move, cartilaginous joints, some movement. Right, now we go on to synovial joints. And synovial joints, we have 4 joints that types of joints we're going to look at. Of our synovial joints, we have the ball and socket joint. Now what happens here is we have this ball that fits into a socket. Where would we have that? Now remember, we did the skeleton, we've gone through the human skeleton. It is completely movable, it rotates, it goes up and down and forwards and backwards. It is your ball and socket shoulder joint, and your rugby players and your fighters and your boxers, and what do you call those guys that fight in cages?
Cage fighters.
No, man.
MMA fighters.
MMA fighters, okay? They'll tell you that it is so easy to dislocate a shoulder. And dislocate the shoulder, well, remember, the bones are held into the bone with tendons. Then you've got ligaments that attach the muscles to the bone. And every now and again, you get a real heavy tackle. It goes, whoops, and the ball comes out of the socket. And do you think that's good? No, no. And is it painful? Extremely painful. All right, the same with your hip joint, except that that doesn't pop out that easily. Okay, then, so your ball and socket, it's complete movement in all directions. Then we've got the gliding joints. Now think about this, it glides. So look at this movement, it glides, you see there? And that's your gliding joint. So the example I gave you was in the wrist, also the ankle. So I can move the ankle backwards and forwards, and it's a gliding joint. And I'm going to show you pictures of what the joints actually look like. And then we have the hinge joint. Now, if you think of a door, doors have a hinge on them. And a door can't swing both ways. I'm talking about normal doors, okay, not a swing door. But a normal door that you have, for example, at your front door, your back door, your bedroom door, you've got a door there. The door only opens in one direction. So think of the joints on your body that only go in one direction. It's going to be your finger, okay, your elbow, your knee, all right? The knee can't go the other direction. I mean, okay, we've got a kneecap there, the kneecap that holds it in place. But elbow doesn't have a kneecap or elbow cap. And look, it can only open to a certain degree and it closes. So it only goes in one direction. That would be your hinge joint. And then we have the pivot joint. Let's make this go up. Your pivot. Now, think about what happens when something pivots. If it pivots, it's able to rotate, okay, as one bone moves across another. So look at my head. Look here. I can pivot my head. There's Ty, and there he's gone. And there he is, and there he's gone. What am I doing? My head is pivoting. On what? On the atlas and the axis. Well, atlas is my first vertebra, which attaches the skull to the spine. And then the very next vertebra, cervical vertebra, is called C2, is the axis. And why do you think it's called the axis? Because it allows for full rotation of the head. Okay, and then also the radius and the ulna. Now look here, I can do this. Why can I do this? Because the radius, remember the radius is on the side of the thumb, the ulna is with my useless pinky side, so ulna, radius, I am able to do this with my hand. Why? Because of the radius on the ulna. All right, now let's look at our bones and our joints. Here are fibrous joints. Please remember, and here's a picture of the skull. Okay, this is the top of a skull. It's called the cranium. Because remember, the cranium plus all your zygomorphic bones, which is your facial bones, plus your lower jaw, all of them together make up your skull. So the cranium is all the bone that's around the top of your head. Okay, there's the cranium, and I'm not sure if you can see these sutures, but I'm doing this, and you'll be able to see it. It actually looks like wiggle woggles all the way through here like this, and it goes down here like that. Okay, those are your sutures. Sutures are like, we also call stitches sutures. It looks like it's been stitched together. All right, so that, for your skull, they are immovable, and we say that they are fibrous. Close your eyes, and think. Think carefully what I've just told you now. So picture fibrous joint, picture they are immovable, and picture this photo of a skull. And then it's imprinted in your brain. Okay, is it imprinted? Cool, let's go on. What are our learners saying there, Ty?
Well, so far, it's the usual, Kathy. Oh, we're enjoying the show. She's awesome. We're following along so well. So
oh, good.
The guys are enjoying themselves.
Cool. Enjoying yourselves. Learning can be fun. What can I say? Okay, people, now we go to cartilaginous joints. And remember, it's got restricted. It's not immovable. It has restricted movement. So he's saying you can move sort of, but not completely. Okay? And here I put a photo of the vertebra, and this is the cartilage disc that we find in between the spinal bones, okay, the vertebral column. So look, you can move, sort of. It allows for some movement, but you're certainly not going to be able to like bend like a straw at the back. Okay, then here is the pubic symphysis there. All right, so that is the cartilage joint that holds the left and the right and the left sides of the pelvis together. All right, and that makes our pubic bone. So there it sits, and right in there is our pubic symphysis, and that is the cartilage. And that cartilage makes our a restricted movement joint. All right, if it was completely rigid, whoa, we would have a problem sitting down, for example. We wouldn't be able to sit because everything would be like this. So we wouldn't be able to like move everything into place and sit nicely. So let's just recap again. Cartilaginous joints, it's restricted movement, right? Restricted movement. And we then look at the spinal cord, at least the spinal column with the bones, the vertebra, and we look at the hips and the pubic symphysis. All right, close your eyes and picture what I've just told you now. Okay, cartilaginous joints, slight movement, but it's very restricted, and we look at the bones in the spine and the pubic symphysis of the hips. All right, now let's go on to our synovial joints. Remember, synovial joints, we have free movement. Right, very important. So, if we look at any synovial joint, this is a sort of a generic diagram of a synovial joint. You need to know the labels of this diagram. It is something they can ask you in an exam, so make sure that you know it. All right, so we're looking at the epiphyseal bone, which is the top bone, or the head of the top bone, and we look here at the erythesis, which is the bottom bone, all right, and the two meet together. Now we are going to have our cartilage, and that cartilage is called articular cartilage. Now when something articulates, it means it is able to move. So articular cartilage is the cartilage that's going to line the head of each of those two bones. All right, so just people, if you can't know or you don't know a word, try and look at what the word says. So articular, it is able to rotate and move on top of each other. So we want lots of cartilage there. So we say, right, it's articular cartilage. You can see the nice little layer. And then we've got our ligaments. Now remember, ligaments hold bone to bone. So do you think they're important? Definitely, they hold the bone to the bone. Okay. Then we have a joint capsule which sits around, and I'm going to just do it here. We have the joint capsule on both sides, and inside that capsule, inside it, we find synovial fluid. And the problem is when people, you know, when you sit there and people crack their fingers, all right?
I have a really bad habit of doing that.
Why?
I don't know. It's just like I need to stretch my fingers, but you can't really like stretch your fingers, you know? So you just crack them. I know, it's really weird. It's bad.
You have to stretch your fingers.
It's
now you have a problem, and you have a problem. Okay, don't do that. Because all that popping, what you're doing is you're creating a bit of stress here. And eventually it calcifies. And you end up with rheumatoid arthritis. So don't do it. Okay, your fingers are not supposed to be cracked around. So let's go back to our synovial. So we've got the synovial cavity, and in that synovial cavity, you are going to find your synovial fluid. All right, and it's that fluid that allows for the movement to be smooth. So you've got your ligaments, you've got your tendons, you've got your articular cartilage, which is around the heads, and we've got this fluid that cushions the movements. And that's what's important. People, you've got to know this diagram. Okay, then joints.
Okay.
Now what I've tried to do here, in fact, I think before we go on to the joints, Ty, are we ready for a break, hey?
I think so. I think it's just about that time to give these guys a nice little breather for themselves.
Okay, cool.
So guys, make sure you stick around. Guys, keep posting on the page, keep chatting to me. And yes, I still have these books to give away. So guys, make sure you call 0861 058 262. Make sure, because I'm waiting to give away these. And make sure you call with a question, though, because it's kind of pointless if you just phone us just like that, if you get what I mean. But then, guys, make sure also post on the page. But we'll see you soon after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you had a nice little break. You went and got your water and your snacks, whatever you needed, so you don't have to get up again or get distracted, so you can focus. Because, guys, I have these awesome winter school books that I'm trying to give away. I need to get these off my hands. So make sure you make it an easy job for me and get on the page. Chat to me. These will go to the people who chat the most, and also will be helping out a lot of people, and I'll be watching to see who those guys are. But for now, I'm actually going to hand over to Kathy. Kathy, take it away.
Thanks, darling. All right, people, now remember, synovial joints, we've got 4 that you need to learn. And what I've tried to do is give you diagrams that will help get it into your heads. So, if we look at the ball and socket, well, you can see it there, but I'm going to write here, ball and socket joint. It's a type of synovial joint. And you've got the ball that fits into a socket. So it would be like taking my hand and putting it into a cup that I make with my other hand. So a ball and socket. And that's what you have at your shoulder and also at your hip. All right? It is able to rotate and move freely. All right? So what we've got here, there's the head of the femur. Okay, it sort of comes out, and if you eat a chicken, the next time you have a chicken, all right, take that chicken bone at the drumstick, eat all the meat off it. I feel like we're not allowed to say makes, but yeah, that one.
Chicken.
Yeah, chicken with that American stuff around the outside, all crispy. Okay, so, but you take your drumstick and you eat all the meat off it, and you suck it all nice and clean, and then you have a look at the shapes that you have there, and you'll see your little head of the femur here, okay, and then the socket is in the actual hip side. So if you're really clever, you'll ask for a drumstick and a thigh, and you look at the drumstick and the thigh, and you'll be able to fit the two together, even though it doesn't belong to the same chicken, but it'll give you a very good idea. So this is at the hip. So here's your hip bone. So clearly this ball and socket is the one for the hip joint. Now if it was our shoulder joint, this would be the arm and the humerus here, and then you'd have your rib cage over here. So socket and the ball. Got it, people? Number 1, ball and socket joint, completely movable, able to rotate and pretty much move in any direction. Now, if you look at this joint, I'm not even going to show you what the picture's down below, what the heading is, but look at this one. If I fit this part into the top, okay, it's going to be able to roll, but look, the movement is restricted. And this then is your hinge. No, man. Hinge joint. English is such a difficult language here. So it's got more exceptions to the rule than the rule. But now if you look at this diagram here and try and put that at the knee. So what have we got at the knee? There's your femur, all right? So the femur is along here. There's your femur. There is your articular cartilage, is this area here. Why? Because the 2 parts of the bones are going to be sitting in there. And you've then got the depressions where the fibula and the tibia. Remember, the tibia is always on the side of the big toe. The fibula is on the baby toe. All right, so tibia, big toe. Tibia, fibula. So you've got the tibia and the fibula. And then the ligaments. Remember, ligaments hold bone to bone. Okay. And then you'll have your muscle, which helps this whole process move. And that is your hinge joint. Why? Because if you look at your knee, it can go straight and then it can bend. It can't go straighter than that, so it can't flip all the way up to your nose. And the same with your elbow. Your elbow can move, all right, in one direction. When it gets to here, it hinges just like a door. So I'm going to write here, just like the hinge on a door. All right, just like the hinge on a door. It can only open to a point and then it has to close. So that's our hinge joint. So what have we done? Synovial joints, we have the ball and socket joint, and we've done the hinge joint. All right, now we look at a pivot joint. Now pivot, it's able to go round and pivot. What pivots? The head. And which vertebra will be causing the pivoting? The axis, not the atlas. Atlas is cervical vertebra number 1. The axis is right below it. So if we look at our little picture here, I've used the pivot joint, I've used the radius and the ulna, but it's also your head. Okay, so look, we can pivot. It turns. And then our last little one that we have here is the gliding joint. And that gliding joint, look here, I glide. Who of you watched the tennis on Saturday and Sunday and Monday and ad nauseum tennis? But look at this. This movement here, that's gliding. And that's here in the wrist action. So that's our fourth one, will be our gliding joint. Now you need to know the joints, and you need to know whether they are movable and immovable. And then when you go to your synovial joints, you need to know what the 4 types of synovial joints are. You need to know the diagram of the synovial joint, and you need to know what the different types are. So it's a gliding joint, pivot joint, ball and socket, hinge, and what parts of the body where you will find it. Okay, so pivot. Am I right? No. Gliding joint, pivot, hinge, ball and socket. Now if we look at human locomotion, why do we have bones? We have bones because they provide a framework, and they also give us an internal structure. This is just recapping, people. So joints, we have fibrous joints are immovable. Cartilaginous joints allow slight restricted movement. Synovial joints are free movement. And our 4 types of synovial joints: ball and socket, hinge, gliding, pivot. Okay? Ball and socket, hinge, gliding, pivot. Or pivot. We can do it all in just the arm. Ligaments, please remember, they attach bone to bone. And tendons attach muscle to bone. Okay, now we look at movement. Okay, now remember, these muscles that cause our skeleton to move, these muscles are all voluntary muscles. In other words, we don't have to think, we have to think to make them work. Your involuntary muscles will be your cardiac muscle, which is the heart and causes the heart to pump, and your smooth muscle, which makes up your organs. If I was your teacher, and since you need to know all the different types of muscle, because remember we did cells make up tissue, make up organs, and you need to know the organs, and your muscles are organs. So I would ask you to tell me the difference between, for example, the different types of muscle, okay, and which types are voluntary and which types are involuntary. So cardiac is involuntary. You don't think to make it work. Your glands are all made up of smooth muscle, and we don't think to make smooth muscle work. It works on its own. You don't sit there and think, liver, are you doing your job? Kidneys, are you doing your job? No. So that should be our smooth muscle. And then we have striated muscle, which makes up our skeletal muscle, and it is completely voluntary. We think to move. All right. Now, I want you to take your arm that you're not writing with, stretch your hand out, and I want you to bring your hand and touch the tip of your nose. Okay? Okay, for the co-ords out there, try very hard. All right, so we're going to touch the tip of our nose. What are we doing? These muscles, now take your other hand, and I want you, let me put my pen down. I want you to take your hand, and I want you to put it on this muscle here. Okay, top of your arm. So, your biceps. And I want you to now bring your hand up to your nose Can you feel this muscle contracting? Even if you're a couch potato and you don't do any exercise, you are going to feel this muscle contracting, and it's going to make a little lump here. It gets shorter as it contracts, and as it contracts, it pulls the hand up. And what's happening to these muscles here? So your triceps and especially the triceps, what's happening to it? It's getting longer. It is relaxing. So whenever we have any muscle movement, we're going to have one set of muscles on the one side will contract, and the muscles on the opposite side are going to relax. And we say that that is antagonistic movement. It is antagonistic because it is opposite. So, when one set of muscles contract, the other set will relax. If I take my finger and I want to bend my finger, these muscles must contract and these must relax. And that is a thought process. I think, okay, I want to show the learners, so therefore I'm going to contract these muscles so I can bend my finger forward. Now I want to straighten it. These muscles are going to contract and these will have to relax. And if I try and open my finger and these muscles will not relax at the bottom here, it's not going to happen. All right, so we have voluntary muscles, and they cover the skeleton and give us our shape. All right? Then we have the point where the muscles is attached is always to an immovable bone, and that is called the origin. Okay, it's the bone that's not going to move. Then the point where the muscle is attached to a movable bone, that's called the insertion. So the origin will be with a bone that's not going to be bending. Okay, so in this case, this bone is not going to be bending. It's this bone that's bending. So this one, the muscle here, the point of attachment here would be the origin. And the muscle, the bone that's going to be moving is going to be the insertion. It's been inserted in there so we can pull it straight. Now, antagonistic movement of the muscles, we need at least two sets of muscles. And one set will contract and one will relax. Okay? And that will cause the muscles and the bones to have leverage. Now, there has to be a point of leverage here. The point of leverage will be my elbow because I'm bringing my hand up. Okay? Origin, insertion, and I'm pulling my hand up. So let's have a look here. Where's my diagram? Here we go. And I hope you can see this. But what we've got here, there's the biceps is in the front. Here's the triceps at the back. All right. And this is the flexing. We're moving it, pulling up, so it's a flex. We flex the muscle. And if we straighten the arm, we have an extension. So this biceps now has to extend. Here it flexes, there it extends. It contracts, it relaxes. This movement is antagonistic. All right? Have we got any questions there so far from the learners?
Yes, we do. We actually have a couple. Actually, one of them was actually from a learner by the name of Lucinda. She wanted to find out, this is one I found pretty interesting. She wanted to find out, why is it that, for instance, if a baby was to fall or be dropped, why is it that they will actually break more actual skeletal bones than an adult, for instance?
A baby?
Yes.
They don't. A baby's bones are soft. Okay? They're very soft. That's why when babies have a disease called rickets, which is a lack of calcium, their bones get soft. And they end up having deformed legs because their bones are so soft that they end up bending outwards because it can't hold all the weight of the body. You can take a baby and you can literally, I must be careful because I really don't want you to go and do this to babies.
This is not a good idea. Do not try that at home.
Babies' bones are softer. They're softer than our bones because they haven't set and they haven't stored up as much calcium as we, for example, have. So when you drop a baby, and also they're quite relaxed, they're chilled. So when you drop the baby, please don't go and try this. They are able to, their bones are softer so they don't break as easily. It takes a lot of pressure to break a baby's bones.
So basically the bones actually take shock a lot better than adult bones.
Take shock a lot better because they're softer. And as they get older, I mean when they now start standing, etc., then the
bones harden.
Something else, that just as a snippet of useless information, I have read somewhere, I couldn't tell you where, that the biggest issue with going into space is that the astronauts, there is no friction, there is no jolting on the bones. And it's this sort of impact on the bones that actually makes the bones strong. The less impact you have on the bones, the weaker they become. And this is why people, if we were to go and live in space, we would have a huge problem because there's no gravity for us to bounce around and compact our bones. So we would end up becoming mushy people, if that makes sense.
No,
but
that completely makes
it's a
sense,
big
yeah.
issue. It's going into space because you have no friction. It's also people who are, for example, paraplegics. And they sit in their wheelchairs all day. There is no impact on their legs, and that's why the muscles dystrophy and their leg bones become very weak. So there you go, people. Just a little bit of extra, what's it? Enrichment.
Exactly.
There we go. Okay, skeletal action, people. I'm just going to go to very simple. Remember, we've got striated muscle, not smooth muscle, and not cardiac muscle. Smooth muscles for organs, cardiac muscles for the heart. Striated muscle is for our voluntary muscles, the muscles that help our skeleton move. Okay, we are able to control it, and we need the will. So we do it via the central nervous system, but with our will. These muscles are attached to the bones of the skeleton. When one muscle contracts, the opposite one will relax. And that's why we say it is antagonistic. Antagonistic. It's antagonistic movement because it's opposite. So the flexor muscle is going to contract, and the other muscle is going to be the extensor muscle is going to relax. So contracting and relaxing. And remember that any muscles that are attached to bones are done, it happens because of the inelastic tendons. Now think of your tendons. You can't have something that's elastic here between your bones because, my gosh, what happens if it stretches? We'll all go flippy floppy. We don't want that. And that's what the problem is with athletes, for example, like rugby players, when they dislocate their shoulder. And then it's easier to dislocate it a second time. So they're going for a really big tackle and bloops, out comes the, till eventually you can just do this and the thing pops out. Now, why? Because your ligaments have now stretched and so have the tendons, and that then they need to have an operation to shorten everything to keep the shoulder, the ball in the socket. Right, and I think we're due for a little break, so over to you, Dol.
On that note, on popping out shoulders, we are going to pop out to an ad break. So guys, make sure you stick around. Make sure you keep posting on the page. Keep chatting. I'm loving what I'm seeing. Great 10s. Awesome. I'm happy to see so many of you on the page. But for now, we're going to see you after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you had a nice little break. You did whatever you needed to do to get out the way, so you make sure that you can focus and pay attention, because we're going to cover a lot right now, and this is the last session, so make sure you guys get in your questions. But I'm going to keep quiet so I can hand it straight back to Kathy. Kathy, take it away.
Cool. Somebody asked about the hips and whether they dislocate when you give birth. No, there's no dislocation. It is just damn sore. Okay, there's no other way to describe it. But what happens is you've got the cartilage at the pubic bone, and that will sort of, remember it is movable, and it will stretch a little bit. Okay, and everything just moves. It's just pushed. It's just the muscles. The bones are there. If it can't get through those bones, you can't get through the bones, and then they end up either the baby can't make it, and it gets squished in there. And then it dies, or else you have a Caesar. It's simple. But the bones, I promise you now, everything is, the space there is big enough to push a baby through. No one dies. Okay, it's normal. All right, now, sprains. Just going through the injuries, a sprain and a strain. And you need to know the difference between them, especially if they give you one of those application type questions. So we say a sprain is when a joint is forced beyond its normal degree of movement. Okay? Sometimes the ligaments may be injured and it is very sore and there's a lot of bruising. And you know what, gentlemen? You are lucky because you wear flat shoes, most of you anyway. But it's us girls who end up wearing these high shoes and you're walking along and the next thing it just goes wonks. And your foot goes from being this high off the ground to your ankle being on the ground. And it's not supposed to have that kind of twisting action. And that generally results in a sprain. And no more high shoes for a while until that poor ankle has sorted itself out. And then a strain with a ST, not a SP. So a ST, a strain. And think of the... If I take this and I take just that part of the word, it goes to train, as in training, training for sport. Think of it that way. So a sprain is because you are silly and you wear very, very high, you purchase very high expensive shoes. So think of a sprain for purchasing expensive shoes and high shoes, and a strain is for train as in athletes. And what happens here is the muscles end up being torn. Why? Because generally when sportsmen and women don't warm up properly, the muscles are not ready to work at that rate and they end up tearing them. And that is a strain with a T for training badly and being silly. Okay, and a sprain is when we wear very high shoes and we go blooks and we just dislocate or hurt our ankle. It's the best way to remember it. All right, now this is just a picture of what a foot looks like, and look at this nice big purple thing here. That's a girl who wore a high shoe. Okay, this here would be a muscle strain. And how do we know it's a muscle strain? Look at this nice purple mark at the back there. The muscle has torn. It's got hurt. Okay, dislocations, we've spoken about that. That would be, for example, in a game, and the reason I use rugby is I know my son's dislocated his shoulder a couple of times, but he's too much of a wuss to actually go and have the op to fix it. So we strap his shoulder up before he plays so that it's a bit more difficult to dislocate. And when he gets to be 45, 50 years old one day, he's going to really be in a lot of pain, but I'll leave him to get to that. You've got all these athletes that it happens to. Now, okay, so we look at this shoulder. The ball comes out of the socket and it sort of goes to the side, and that is very, very, very sore. That would be a dislocation. The ball is dislodged from the socket. Okay, and then fractures. Clearly a fracture is when the bone is damaged and the bone is actually broken. All right? I just wanted to show you this. Here, that's a dislocation. Can you see here? I'm going to put the ball there. And this is where the socket is. So the ball moves out of the socket and the leg is then at a funny angle. This This here is a break. So here you can see how the bone has been broken. It's broken through. So this part here, that's a partial fracture because it's only a little bit. This is a complete fracture, but we call it a simple one because it's straight. Here we have a complete fracture because the bones have actually moved apart. If we look at this, there's a compound fracture. Remember, simple means one. Compound means there's a whole bunch of things that happen. So this would be a compound fracture because you've got a break here and another break completely through there and another break over there. We're going to put this on for you so you can see them nicely. This will be a commuted fracture, which is a real mess. This, you'd need pins to fix that. Here you'd need pins to fix as well, and here you'd use pins as well. And then if we look at this one, this is a green stick fracture, which is just a very, very slight fracture. A lot of kids end up with a green stick fracture. Okay, just joints, just showing you the joints, and then here is your fracture. You see there? It's got that. And what do? They straighten it and then they put pins in it, and the pins hold it all in place. Very, very sore. All right, muscle cramps. The biggest issue with muscle cramps is that you have a lack of magnesium. So the best thing to do would be to take tablets or capsules that have a slow releasing magnesium into your system. But it's mainly magnesium, and also you need to make sure that you warm up properly. And then your cyclists will tell you that you must always have enough water, because if you have enough water and mineral salts, including magnesium, you're not going to get muscle cramps. And the last thing was a concussion. What is a concussion? Now, we've all heard athletes. How are we going for time here? Because our clock's not working.
I think we've got about 3 minutes.
Okay. If you have a concussion, I watched a boxing match the other night with one of the main boxers, and I just looked at the way those heads were being hit. And boom, 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 and that head's bouncing around like that. A concussion is when you've got the skull and you've got the brain. Oh, this thing's just, it keeps doing these silly things. Just hold my pen for me, please. Okay, so what you've got is you've got the brain, the cranium, and you've got the brain. And everything's sitting there very nicely. And remember, you've got a fluid that sort of protects the brain and shock absorbs it. So when you go and let's say, for example, you fall, and as you fall backwards, your head, your brain's sort of moving with your skull, and then your skull hits against the ground. And the brain goes, so it stops moving. But the brain carries on moving, goes against the back of the skull. Okay? And then it bounces forward. So it depends on which side it bounces the hardest, and it will bruise. And that bruise is what a concussion is. So the brain is bruised, and it cannot function properly there. And if you hit your head very hard at the back, your vision will be affected. And again, it goes to sports like boxing, like rugby, for example, are really bad. I mean, if you watch how those guys hit the ground, we played England last Saturday, and if you see how they hit the ground, their head goes, dwah! And you think, how those guys get up and can actually move? Because the brain is cushioned, but it's not supposed to be bouncing around areas. And if it's bruised in an area that's needed or necessary, then you either can't speak properly, or you'll have slurred speech, or you'll feel like you're drunk, or you won't be able to see. And if it's really bad concussion, people, the person will start to vomit. And if they do, get them to a hospital immediately. And never ever allow just a bit of first aid. Somebody you suspect of concussion, you never ever let them sleep. You let them, they must stay awake for at least 4 hours after they've got hurt. And you don't give them any painkillers. So if they do have to, they start vomiting and they have to go to hospital, they don't have to wait for whatever you've given them to eat to work its way through, so they can sort it out. So over to you, Ty. We're done for today.
I think we are. We're actually pretty
How are
much done.
learners doing?
Well, the
Nice
learners are
little
pretty good.
posts.
If my computer decides to cooperate, sometimes it just...
It's those gremlins, hey?
Exactly. But
All computers are male. I've talked to the computers, and they only do what you tell them to do.
Because right now it's actually looking out because we just hit 12,000 on the page.
You're joking!
Like I I kid you not. We just hit 12,000 on the page.
Guys, thank you.
So
these things always happen when it's
exactly.
when
It's
I'm
always
here.
our combination.
I know.
So guys, make sure you keep posting on the page. We will be back on the 6th of July, but make sure you are here tomorrow because there is still maths literacy. But for us, we will see you next time.